Hi there and welcome to the video. This is the introduction and quick walk around and specification for my new to me 2014 Ferrari FF. I've had the car for about 2 months now and I've put just about 1,000 miles on it, and it's been a wonderful car so far. So this is a 2014 model year. The exterior color is Mirabeau Blue, and the interior color is Couio. So as I kind of walk around, we'll go over some of the major specifications and features with this car. Of course, this is the first four-wheel drive Ferrari. The nameplate FF meaning Ferrari 4 for 4 seats as well as four-wheel drive. It's not a traditional four-wheel drive system. It's got a dual clutch 7-speed Getrag gearbox in the back, and then in the front Ferrari has its own proprietary 2-gear front wheel transmission, I guess you can call it, called the PTU, or the power transfer unit. Under the hood it has the 6.3 liter V12, which is similar but not the same as what's in the 599 as well as the F12, and it's derived from or based off of the V12 that was in the Enzo. So what I'll be doing is kind of going through a general walk around and specification of this vehicle in particular. There's plenty of reviews and other videos online with all the regular features in this car, and I won't be going over all of those things here. Starting off with the exterior of this car, and I have the specification list here. I'm going to go through it one by one. The exterior color, once again, is Mirabeau Blue. It's a really gorgeous blue color, and it really interacts well with the sunlight. When it's in direct sunlight, it's a really bright color, but you can see here the parts of the car that aren't in the sun almost have a hint of purple to it. And if you kind of get up really close, it has an incredible amount of metallic flake in the paint. This car's paint is in really good shape overall. It only has PPF on the very front end, which will probably change soon, but it's a relatively low mileage car. Doesn't look like it was ever beaten or abused before I got a hold of it, and overall the paint is in really good shape. There's some light swirls on it, but even with the swirls on it, the paint is so metallic that you have to get just the right amount of light at the right angle to even tell that there's any swirling on it. So the first option for this car on the outside here is the yellow brake calipers. And it's got the 20-inch forged diamond wheels. And in particular on this car, the wheel is kind of a gunmetal gray color, but it's got a finished face on it. And the yellow brake caliper was a must for me. It just matches the center cap. And then moving right over, it's got the Scuderia shields. With the FFs, I know some people prefer them with no shields, but given how long the body is and just having that shield to break up the line and a little bit of color coordination really makes a difference. So the next thing to note on the car, exterior wise, this car doesn't have a ton of options. It obviously does have the 20-inch wheels. It has the Michelin tires, which is actually a factory option. So it has the Pilot Super Sport K1 tires on it, and the K1 just specifies that it was made for Ferrari as an OE tire. It also does have the tire pressure monitoring system. And that's, well, one more option on the outside is it has the electrochromatic mirrors, which means that they are heated. So overall, it's relatively bare bones on the exterior, but during my search, the number one priority for me was blue. That's my favorite color on this car, really by far. And in 2014, Ferrari made 394 of these. You just don't really see very many that are in blue or really in any color, to be honest. In 4 to 5 months of looking, this was the first and only blue car that I found, and I jumped on it pretty quickly, mostly because of that. Of course, we have to take a quick look under the hood as well, as it has the iconic Ferrari V12. Once again, it's the 6.3 liter V12. I can't remember the engine code off the top of my head. It's either the E or the F140. 6.3 liters of displacement, naturally aspirated V12 with 651 horsepower and about 504 foot-pounds of torque. As with all Ferrari cars, you do have your chassis number just under the hood, which is also the last 6 digits of the VIN number of the particular car. And in between your intakes here and the air boxes, you have the cover for the front transmission, or the PTU. And overall, Ferrari definitely did a very good job designing this engine bay. It's a really, really beautiful thing to look at. It has covers in the areas where covers help the visual appearance, but in the areas where it really matters, they've left it open, and you can see the intake manifold and the cylinder heads and all of the V12 glory. So moving to the interior of the car. Interior color for this car is Couio, which is basically just the Italian word for leather. It's in a natural leather color. The carpet in this car, as well as the upper dashboard and the steering wheel, is actually in a dark blue, which is a really, really nice touch. Considering the vast majority of these cars, even the ones that are in Couio, it's more of a black and Couio two-tone. So on the interior, this car has the carbon fiber driver zone. And the carbon fiber driver zone specifically is the steering wheel in carbon fiber, the shift paddles in carbon fiber, as well as the surround for the rev counter in carbon fiber as well. It does have the diamond stitched seats, which are full electric with ventilation. Which I know you're struggling to see with the light, but it has the diamond stitched headliner as well. The cavalinos are stitched onto the headrest in dark blue as well, and the whole car has contrast stitching in dark blue, as well as dark blue seat belts. So overall, it's a really nice play on color. There's a lot of different ways you could have spec'd these out, and to be honest, the vast majority of the ones that I saw during my search were not how I would have spec'd it out, but interior wise, aside from maybe a panoramic roof, this was about as close to my ideal spec as I saw during my search. It does not have the passenger display, which would be nice, but it's a very, very basic display. The newer cars have much more information available on the display, which would make it a bit more worth it to have. The previous owner, or one of the previous owners, did also get this matching dark blue and tan set of floor mats for the car, which is a nice touch. Some people think it's a little bit too much diamond stitching, but I think it ties everything together quite well. So looking at the back seats here, it may not seem like it, but there is plenty of space. I've had 2 full-sized adults in the back for quite a while. The rear seats are actually raised a little bit, so you sit a little higher off the ground than you do in the front, and that actually helps you get a much better view out of the windows. But once again, the number one option I wish this car had was the panoramic roof. I know it doesn't make much of a difference to the driver, but it does do a lot for the amount of light that the interior gets in, and for the passenger experience. It would really, really be nice to have had that panoramic roof. It was a $17,000 option, and really not very many of these cars were spec'd from the factory with a panoramic roof. So from the driver's seat of this car, you can see essentially the last option that I hadn't mentioned just yet, which is the yellow rev counter. And with the carbon fiber driver zone, the carbon fiber wheel does come with the shift lights as well. There are 5 LEDs on here, the first of which activates around 5,600 RPMs, and the next successive light will activate every 500 RPM. So roughly from 5,600 or so until the red line of just over 8,000, around 8,100 RPM. Looking back a little bit, you've got the pretty iconic Ferrari steering wheel, where just about everything is on the wheel. You have your turn signals, which are incredibly intuitive, and everyone who's driven the car has gotten used to it in less than 20-30 minutes. Nobody misses the stocks once they experience this. You've got your windshield wipers on this side, your Manatino switch, of course the engine start button, the bumpy road button, as well as the headlight button. There's the little screen on the bottom right side of the tack, which will be your gear indicator and also indicate whether you are in automatic or manual shifting modes. To the left and right, you've got your 2 TFT displays. The left side display will show a lot of the vehicle dynamics, as well as oil temperature, water temperature, fuel pressure, tire pressures, things like that. Whereas on the right side, it will display your speed. You can either set it to display an analog looking speedometer, or it can just display a digital readout of your speed. On the left side down here, you've got your light switch, as well as some controls for those TFT displays. This knob here that says pit speed is the cruise control, and this was an option in these cars. Many of these cars did not come with cruise control. Now this particular car does not have the suspension lift. If it did, there would be a button down there for the suspension lifter, which would raise all 4 corners. That's one feature I do wish this car had. With my driveway, it has a pretty big bump, and it would be nice to have the lift. This button here is for the rear view camera. Moving over to the center area, you have your very bare bones radio and navigation system. This is the same one that was on a lot of FCA products around that time, so it may be very familiar to a lot of people. It's not the greatest thing in the world, but it gets the job done. Down to the climate control, and then going further down, you have your center bridge area with your reverse button, the auto manual button, as well as the PS, or essentially launch control button. Now one option you'll notice, or a few options that you'll notice that aren't on the options list on this particular car, but on some cars, especially the older models, were options, are things such as the parking sensors. So this car has front and rear parking sensors, as well as the backup camera. So at the time of this video, this car currently has just over 6,000 miles. I purchased it, like I said, 2 months ago with just over 5,000 miles. So I've put a little over 1,000 miles already in the first 2 months, and it has been a near flawless car. I've had an incredible time driving it. It's really, really easy to drive. The steering on this car is absolutely impeccable. It's a light steering, and I didn't think I would like the light steering because I'm usually a fan of heavier steering, but it's so precise and so sharp and very, very confidence inspiring. But in the 1,000 miles I've put on it, I've already taken it on a road trip to the Blue Ridge Parkway, where it did wonderfully. Now the exhaust on this car sounds amazing when the valves are opened. These cars have vacuum valves in the mufflers, and There's no way to open the valves under normal driving conditions unless you have more than about 30% throttle, which is a bit of a shame, especially coupled with the double glazed glass. It's incredibly quiet on the inside, and when the valves are closed, it's a little bit too quiet. So one of the first things that I'll be doing to this car as soon as I'm able to is to go underneath. You can pull the vacuum lines on the valves and basically open them permanently, which will really add a lot to the sound. But also, one annoyance that I've noticed a lot while driving this car is, especially if you're cruising and you downshift once, not necessarily to do a pull or to go fast, but just to get a little bit more revs in the engine. Sometimes it'll kick the valves open for about a second or two, and it's pretty jarring, and you have very little control over it. And that would just be nice to not have to worry about. Now, coming back to the front end, there are two other options that many of these cars will have that mine does not. One is the AFS, or the directional lighting, where the headlight beam will turn with the direction of the wheel. Secondly, it does not have the chromed front grille, which many of these cars do. That's an option that kind of depends on your personal preference. Some cars look good with it, some cars look good without it. I just wanted the blue. Everything else I can compromise. So there you have it. That's the walk around of my 2014 Ferrari FF. I'll be making an occasional video of this with this car, documenting the ownership. And I was looking for these cars. There really wasn't a lot of information on them, and it never hurts to have a little bit more info or a little bit more insight or another person's perspective on these cars, especially with how far they've depreciated in price, and they're a little bit more attainable than the MSRP suggests, at least. So thanks again for watching, and hopefully I'll catch you soon with the next one.